All right, I will call to order a regular meeting of the Wellington Board of Selectmen. It is July 18th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. If you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. First item is approval of minutes from our last regular meeting, which was July 5th. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Motion by Liza, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by
Have some
Jim.
corrections.
Discussion.
Regular meeting minutes is, it's like on the first line there, in person, town office building, downstairs room. We've been meeting upstairs. Just a minor,
Okay,
it's a minor correction.
that's correct. Kelsey starts some of these beforehand, so that's when I did not notify that.
I don't think she was here last time. So
She was not, we
wouldn't know.
moved upstairs because the internet went at the last moment, I recall. All right, anything else? We'll make that correction. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Present to speak. If you are present to speak, I'd ask you to state your name for the record and limit yourself to 2 minutes. I'm going to start in the room and then I'll go to folks online. If you're in the room and you'd like to speak, I'd ask you again to state your name for the record and limit yourself to 2 minutes. I saw your hand go up.
Excuse me, Amit Tainman, live on Lisa Lane, but I'm here as a member of the Park and Rec Commission. So I understand there's a complaint about the poster down there on River Road. It's, we worked very hard to make sure that any advertising down there is non-political. And that's what that it is. It just simply says Jeff Gordon wishes Wellington a wonderful summer. There's nothing political about that. There's nothing red, white, and blue in the background. There's nothing about voting. There's nothing about what part. I don't even know what party he's from. So if there's a complaint that somehow got forwarded to Alan Humphrey, who's our rec director, who I think is doing a great job, by the way. He had a tough act to follow. He's doing a wonderful job. We're all very supportive of him. We'd like some support from you as well. And, you know, Eric, I'm speaking specifically because there needs to be some pushback against some of the residents if they think that's a political ad, which it's not. Okay.
Thank you. The other present to speak in the room? Yeah, yes, I'll start here in the front row. Yes.
So I'm Rosiana Chinchilla and I live at 5 Common Road. And I'm here about 2 things. One is the light that beams down onto the old town hall is so bright that it lights up the night sky all day. And I was recently reading an article in the New York Times and it said that lights that are on day and night don't really frighten thieves. That it would be so much better if there was a light that was motion sensor. And I kindly would request that you would do that. My neighbors, the nuns, also feel strongly about this because there's light in their house all night. So that's one issue. And the second issue, and so the meeting that's happening tomorrow, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But I was very surprised to find out from Robin that we as citizens of this town have no other recourse. We cannot petition for a referendum and we can't go to the selectmen. And I really feel that an issue as important as that one, although I hopefully do trust in the PCC committee, I would just ask if there was some emendation to the regulations wherein we could, as citizens, do a petition for a referendum or ask the Board of Selectmen to review a decision that could affect all of us so much.
I just asked a point of clarification. You're speaking about zoning meeting and
Meeting
proposed.
tomorrow
tomorrow,
at
okay.
7:30 in the hall school.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else in the room? Yes, sir, in the back row.
I have one, if I may ask one question. You were complaining about the light. Is that something?
No, the light's been on all this time.
It's been bothering you for a long time.
Only since the last year. Before that, there was just one light that went down on the flag.
Okay,
And, but now it's a big bright light. Like, I feel like they changed the bulb.
well, that's what I was wondering,
Right,
whether
wait.
they changed the bulb.
I'll just
Thank
remind
you.
that, yeah, we won't get into back and forth at present to speak, so.
Thank you for.
Yes, sir, in the back row.
David Duranick, 22 Wellington Hill Road. If you're not familiar with Wellington Hill Road is, it's 320, it's the roller coaster. I saw a while back that you were gonna talk to the state police new commander about doing patrols in this town. It hasn't slowed anybody down on my road. People fly, motorcycles, cars, trucks, everybody. I've been known to step out in the middle of the road to slow them down. I haven't done it yet, but I'm getting tired of it. I only been home for a year. I've been over the road, so this is the first time I've had a chance to really voice my opinion on it.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Well,
Anyone else in the room present to speak? Yes, Mr. Clyde.
You know. Yeah, I'm Herb Clyde from 76 Turnpike Road. I'm still trying to find an assessor, somebody that will address my assessment problem on a property. In fact, I was here at the last meeting and you said that we would be resolved, you'd have an assessor by July 1. I went there today and found that we still don't have an assessor. Not only that, I keep getting these tax bills that I'm supposed to pay by August 1 with wrong numbers on them. Everybody that has looked at them says I'm correct. But I can't find anybody in town who has a responsibility to change the numbers. And so I said, okay. My son gets a bill on the property next to him and the assessment was raised. And I'm saying, well, okay, if they can raise it, maybe they can lower it too. So I go to the town office, assessor today, and say, okay, where is it? Where is this? Well, that committee doesn't meet again until next March. And I'm saying, what is going on here? A town member cannot get someone in authority to look at his numbers and make a change. What do we do?
So I know the process you're talking about is the Board of Assessment Appeals.
Yes,
And they do, I know they met in March. I know they're meeting in September. I believe that is only motor vehicle. But I'm not sure of the new issue you're speaking of. So let's communicate tomorrow or Wednesday. I'll give you a call with those in the assessor's office so I can understand your issue. Okay?
I'm sorry, could you speak, let's
I
look,
apologize.
my hearing is not good.
So I will communicate with you directly
Yeah,
and take a look at all of the questions that you have in the assessor's office so that we can properly direct you in what needs to be done. But I think what you're being told is that the Board of Assessment Appeals is what will hear your issue. I don't know that to be true. That's what you're describing to me. And so I want to take a look at it. That's not information I have here and can answer you.
am I? I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
Tomorrow she will speak to you.
Yes, I know. Well, okay, I'll wait for your call
Okay.
then.
Yes,
You got my number?
I will get it for you. Are you going to leave now?
It's 860.
Do you want it on public record or do you want to come over and write it down?
Okay.
You're on television.
You're on the recording, so. Okay,
Maybe some girl will call me up.
that will be me. That will be me. I promise I will communicate with you tomorrow and I'll get your information before you leave here. Okay, if you want to give your number to Kelsey before you go.
I'll wait your call.
Okay. All right, anyone else in the room present to speak? Seeing no other, we'll go online and I'm just gonna go left to right, how I see you. We'll start with Mr. Tella.
Nicholas Della, 49 Myrtle. Just wanted to read off something on cga.ct.gov in regards to revaluation. Real briefly, it says here, phase in, talks about phase in. The law allows municipalities and to phase in some of the entire dollar amount or percentage increase in a property's assessed value over 5 years. It also allows them to divide the property into classes and phase in the percent age increase for each class. And then it goes into a hyperlink that gives more detail. Also says that the state has authorized several methods to reduce the aftershocks of residential property. PA 89 TAC 251 allows municipalities to grant tax credits to residential property owners while imposing a surcharge on non-residential owners. There's also more in that sentence. I pass that along to you later on. Just concerned, JP Morgan came out today and said, hey, we might be looking at $380 a barrel. We got a lot of financial things on the horizon at a macro level. And I think the town needs to try to do what they can to help with revaluations coming up. So that's all I have. Oh, actually, in the crime on cannabis, I'd like to make sure we take a good look at that before we start allowing stuff in here. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Marshall.
Hi, everybody. James Marshall, 46 Fisher Hill Road. I just wanted to come here because I'm following up and to address an application that I had submitted related to an alternate position on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I introduced myself. I've spoken at a couple of these meetings now, but I'm interested in the position. I know it was received by the town clerk and forwarded along to the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, who I believe gave a favorable recommendation. I was surprised not to see it on the agenda today. Just any discussion about it, but just wanted to follow up and say hi and that I remain interested in the position and hope to be able to serve the town of Wellington in that capacity as an alternate, and hoping to run and next year to serve as in a full capacity as a regular member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the alternate role I know would give a lot of insight and input as to how the procedural process goes on that board. My experience as an architect has only really given me opportunity to present before boards, as an applicant or in support of an applicant. So at any rate, just reiterating my interest, inquiring. I know we can't have a back and forth, but inquiring as to where that may be. And I hope to hear further and discuss this with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna go next to Ms. Cook, or I assume is Ms. Cook.
That is me. This Donna Cook, 77 Common Road. I just wanted to speak out about a couple things. One is when I looked at our town website today, we describe ourselves as a small rural town. And I actually looked at the information to support that's on the website from the Connecticut magazine. And I was really encouraged to see that for a town our size, we were rated number 7 out of 25 towns. And even when I look at some of the other ranges of towns, we have a pretty good rating. And I believe that people that move to Wellington are here because they like the ruralness and the low crime. And so I'm in opposition to having any cannabis facilities in town. I believe it'll increase the crime. I don't believe that there's a reasonable way to monitor those things. I've had planning and zoning minutes in the past where there was always a problem and they brought it to whoever it was, and they have no power of enforcement. So I'm really concerned about the safety of the community. I'd also like to request, in order to keep our town a small rural town and preserve the quality of life we have and the low noise level, that the Board of Selectmen requests that planning and zoning put in a maximum building square footage of something like, say, I don't know, 250,000 square feet. That would be a little bit bigger than FedEx, but much smaller than the $1.5 million, 1.5 million square foot facility that we're being proposed, that I believe will have a significant negative impact on everybody who lives here. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, I believe that's you.
Arthur Christensen, 14 Birch Meadow Lane. First off, I would just like to reiterate my disdain for the present to speak format, particularly when members of the board break their own rules and respond to the comments that are made. It's unfair to the citizens speaking when the board has the last word and there can be no additional response. If you wish to have a dialogue with the townspeople, by all means, please do, and make this time for discussion. That being said, I want to go back to last week's comments from the board during good and welfare. Selectwoman Board says at 3536 of the YouTube video of the 7/5/2022 Board of Selectmen's meeting, quote, "Once again, as we have done in years past, just caution about the amount of information that does get shared back and forth on social media platforms, that unless it's coming from the official town page, it's not official information," end quote, 3554. This is a very interesting thing to say because the issue was posted on the official town Facebook page on June 9th, and there was community interaction. In fact, there are updates as to when this would be addressed on that same thread. Once the item in question was continued, that is when the communication from the town stopped despite further questions from the townspeople. My issue was and continues to be the lack of response after the continuation. I still cannot understand why the issue could not have been explained to the town on the town page after it was evident it would not be able to be addressed on planning and zoning, especially considering there were town responses until that point. The Board of Selectmen Zoom that day had 11 people on it, so 9 besides the board and public works, and has received a whopping 33 views to date and has a whole 122 subscribers. Contrast that with the 1,900 plus followers on the town's Facebook page, and it's pretty clear which method reaches more people and should be utilized more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online present to speak? Going once, going twice.
Sarah, right, please.
Sarah, do you have your hand up? No, I think she was using it. Okay, I'm going to move on. There will be an opportunity at the end of our meeting. Next item is Selectmen's updates. I have just a couple tonight. The school building committee met last Wednesday. Yes, July 6th at 6:30. Erica Brasher resigned from the committee, which opens a spot for a staff member from Wellington Board of Education. They have sent forth a name, but Robin needs a different kind of response. I believe that's the latest I've been told. So before we can move forward and filling that with a staff member from Wellington Board of Ed. The committee has been working towards finding an appraiser for one private owned parcel. And the discussion was held on hosting public feedback sessions and a survey. It was decided to create a YouTube presentation on information, but hold up on the survey at this time. So that's what they're moving forward with. At that last meeting, a motion was made to request the Board of Finance ask the Board of Selectmen to hold a town meeting to appropriate the $100,000 from the reserve fund for consultant dollars. And I assume that will be moved forward to the Board of Finance, who meets this Thursday, the 21st. Their next meeting is this Wednesday, the 20th at 6:30. And again, those meetings currently are hybrid here in this room and on Zoom. As far as ARPA, a hybrid public hearing was held on July 11th. There were numerous projects discussed, including walking track improvements at Reval Road, technology upgrades at the senior center, an employee retention bonus for both town office building staff, as well as Wellington 1 Fire Department paid staff, and the installation of the perimeter key location traffic cameras that we moved forward. A commission meeting was held today. The camera project proposed was voted down at ARPA today, voted to not move forward as it received no public support. And we had lots of questions about that project as well. So I would suggest, if this is something that we wish to further consider, that this board have more discussions regarding the scope and potential funding for that. And at today's meeting, it was moved to take no further action on current spending projects until we seek legal advice on a matter that was raised by a resident. And the next scheduled meeting is Monday, August 1st at 1:30 p.m. Kelsey, these COVID numbers are current. So as of last Friday, we're still at 69% fully vaccinated. That has not been a change in some time. We have a current increase of 12 COVID positive cases since our last meeting. So once again, just asking folks to be aware. And I know the current variant they're speaking of seems to be highly contagious, but we're not seeing some of the larger numbers we had seen in the winter and even in the spring. All right, with that, any further comments or questions regarding status update?
No.
Okay, I'm going to Public Works. Troy is on this call. Can I just pause? We did not, communications, looks like it didn't make, oh, correspondence. I skipped over correspondence, which was item 5. You have a list of correspondence in your packets. One of those was a concern that was raised and present to speak. All right, so I'll move forward to Public Works. So Troy is.
Sorry, can I flip?
Yes, your
So
name.
that is in our community correspondence. I don't know where that sign is. Where is that sign?
So this is regarding a donation that was made, concert series. Initially, it was made by a candidate for public office. And at that time, we were advised by the town attorney, which I shared with the rec commission, that our past practice has not been to have such advertising. And the town appeared to take a political stance in any way for any political candidate. The rec commission chose to allow that person to make a donation with just their name and no political affiliation. The level of donation allows both, depending on the level of donation, you can get a banner. So there is now a printed banner at River Roads. I received several phone calls and one written communication to this office. So I shared that both with this board and with the rec commission.
I, for one, am very grateful that Mr. Gordon donated at a platinum level. That certainly helps our
It certainly does.
concert series as a
I
patron
think,
of that series.
I think the town, and again, our town attorney weighed in on it not being advised that we move forward with this, and I shared that, and the rec commission took a different stand on that. And I'm certainly at this point sharing the communication with you all and with the board that made the decision. So that's where we stand. All right, now Troy.
All right, can you hear me okay?
You can.
All right, so roadside mowing still continuing on. We've installed some new signs around town, some new stop signs, some street signs. We regraded Kutchko Road. We've mowed around Public Works and the dog pound. We've been cleaning off catch basins around town. We mowed Hall's Pond and other spots in town with sight lines. New guardrail was installed on Moose Meadow Road where the Moose Meadow little road project is going on. And we started to sweep for a chip sealing that will hopefully start in the next few weeks. And that's about it.
So Troy, can I ask that we talk about one more thing that you brought to my attention? We talked about this, I believe, on Friday, or it may have been the weekend we spoke, and then official communication this morning. So our current propane vendor is High Grade Gas Service. They, as they come in as our new vendor, and they have been our vendor prior to this, they have basically, did they take our tanks out of service, Troy?
Yes, they did. Well, they're still in service at the moment, but High Grade will not put propane in.
Will not fill them.
Will not.
So we're talking about the tanks at Public Works Garage and at the dog pound. So this will certainly be an issue as we get into winter, but they will no longer service them nor fill them. So what they're recommending is that both of those tanks be taken out of service and replaced. And they have given us some quotes. Because I just got this morning, I wanted to make you all aware. I want to talk with Troy and Donna to see if we have some funding available within this budget. So are both of those tanks currently 1,000-gallon tanks?
Yep, both tanks are currently 1,000 gallons. Yep.
And so their recommendation, just so selectmen are aware, based on the account history, they believe the 500-gallon tank would be sufficient for the garage. But they included the cost for $1,000-gallon tank if we chose to keep the same size we had. And I know we're talking about adding a new generator to that, but
Yeah.
they're aware of that as well. So what they've given us a cost estimate on are the cost of a new tank being delivered to the site, the transfer of any remaining propane in the existing tank to the new tank, a safety flare, remove and dispose of the old tank, and place the new tank in service by connecting existing regulator and gas line and pressure testing system. So we're looking at per tank, an additional $5,400 for a 500-gallon above ground tank. The one at the dog pound, is that 500 gallons currently?
No, so they're both 1,000 gallons. Okay, so they gave you two prices, and he said, and high grade gas is not aware of the generator being installed because there wasn't funds yet through ARPA. If it didn't go, then we wouldn't have to put that in there. But if that tank would be, I would probably recommend using the 1,000-gallon tank that is there instead of going smaller.
We're looking at, if we replace them at 1,000-gallon tanks, we're looking at close to $18,000
Yep.
that we certainly did not budget for.
Why?
Troy, can you answer the why?
The tanks are out of date basically. In the previous 2 years where we didn't have high grade gas, the company obviously never checked the tanks. And high grade came around when they was awarded the bid, looked at it and said that the tanks were basically unsafe for them to put propane in. They refused to put propane in them. So
What is a safety issue?
it is a safety issue. Yep.
And at this point, they've said they will not.
Well,
And so in order to have heat in the garage and the dog pound, we'll have to look further. So before we move forward and go to Board of Finance or others, I want to take a look at the budget and see if we feel like there's any dollars here and then come back to you. But I wanted to make you aware of it today as it's just come across my desk.
I think you might want to just discuss with Donna about the 1,000-gallon thing, because I'm sure she
yeah.
has a
She does. And that's,
bulk purchase or whatever, and then that
Right.
might be part of the.
well, I want to,
pricing.
right. And so I want to talk to Don about the whole thing and the funding, and we haven't had any communication about that. So tonight's really information sake for you all, and I'm sure it'll be coming before you one way or the other in the future.
So Troy, how old are the tanks? Just curious.
to be honest with you, I don't know off the top of my hand, but they've got to be over 20 years old, I would imagine.
Okay, so they're at the lifespan.
They're at the lifespan. Yeah. Don't hold me to the 20 years, but I do believe that the tanks I want to say they're a 20-year cycle. I know a regular gas grill tank, if you were at 12 years, they won't fill those anymore. So it's got to be a little older than 12 to 20 years, somewhere in there. I can find that information out for you.
Thank you.
I don't think you have to find it out. It's just,
You know, we're certainly
neither.
disappointed that it's just coming to us now with our new vendor. A little bit disappointing, for sure. But we'll move forward and see what we need to do. All right, anything else for Public Works? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to old business. We're still looking to approve the job description for the senior center coordinator. The seniors had a meeting last week. Jenny was unable to attend as it was the first week of summer camp. And so what she shared with me is that they have some things that they wanted to forward on to us for consideration, and they just have not been able to get that to us yet. So I suggest that we hold off on this. What I'll say, and then we'll communicate with the Seniors Inc. group, is that until that time, they're going to make sure, they need to make sure that they fill, you know, the void there until such time we can move forward with this. And so I look forward to their input and what they have to say on this. All right. Item 9 of new business, and we'll let Jenny have an early evening. as summer camp is quite an ordeal. Fun though. Okay, tax refunds. I will move to refund Gail LeBlanc a certificate of correction in the amount of $220.45.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, the next item is awarding the contract for our annual chip sealing. In front of you, you will see information forwarded from Troy Public Works. The following roads on this list are what he would like to chip seal this year. Troy, correct me if I'm wrong, are these all the roads that we were unable to do last year because of the rains and the damage done in this area?
Correct, yes.
So we spent a lot of time working on the edges of these roads. Now we have to take care of the rest of it. So what you see in their quote were all of the roads and items presented. Some of those will still be done. The center school parking lot comes from a different fund. It's not part of Troy's scope of work. And so I will then move to award the Town of Wellington Annual Chip Sealing Services to Gorman Group in the amount of $141,064.95.
Second.
Second by Liza, discussion. I will remind you the Gorman Group is a state-approved vendor. Troy, we used them in the past as well, correct? And your recommendation is to go with Gorman, correct? And I know there are other roads on your quote list that did not make it to the final list. And I think the reality of that is the budget does just simply will not allow to have all of it done, correct? So Troy's had to prioritize on the roads, and we are, I'll remind you, we are moving forward with the beta management software that will help us gather some data to formulate our road plan in the future. So I look forward to seeing what that says in comparison to the decisions Troy's had to make. Any discussion?
So the 141,064. Oh, I see it. The quote I see it before me has the chips, the crack seal, right?
No, it has other roads. So some of these aren't done, like the center school parking lots. The quote in there is for
Okay.
13,000. That is a CIP project.
Yeah.
So it is separate than Troy's work. And then some of the roads on this list, because of only having, I believe Troy's budget was $143,000 or $145,000, simply not having the dollars.
Okay, it's just chip sealing. Okay.
This is just chip sealing, yes.
And Troy, you said you worked for them before. I mean, you're happy with them. They're good to work with. They're accommodating to.
Yep, absolutely. They've done it the last 2 years. We've chipped. Last year we didn't, but the first year they did. In the previous year, not last year, they did for us too. So that's 2 years. I'd recommend them.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Next item is awarding the contract for our annual crack sealing. Again, the same thing. There's a list of roads that Troy asked for estimates on. And because of the dollars within his budget, he's narrowed down to the areas on the list for a total of $29,715 to help preserve these roads this year with this method. So I would, and so the proposal is from A&A Asphalt. So I move to award the Town of Wellington annual crack sealing services to A&A Asphalt in the amount of $29,715.
Second.
Seconded by Jim. Again, Troy, this is your recommendation to go with A&A Asphalt. and they are a state approved vendor. So
And did we use them before, Troy?
Yes, we've used them for 3 years now.
Troy, and I meant to ask you this, it'll be a little bit easier to spot the folks from Gorman. It's quite the process in chip sealing, but will they be identifiable, A&A asphalt? So we'll put something out that lets folks know that they'll be in the area and when they're working on these roads. But is their team or their vehicles easily identified?
I mean, there's usually a van or a pickup truck, and then there's a big like melting box in the back of them. So there's a crew of 3. So if you see them out there, usually one goes out in front and blows all the cracks out in front, and then you see the other ones behind him filling the cracks in.
So make sure we communicate on our webpage when they're working on these roads. All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, this one is not going to be as cut and dry, folks. So the next item is awarding a vendor for the Public Works single axle plow truck. So this was a 22-23 CIP project. Like anything we're dealing with in our personal worlds, the cost of vehicles has increased a lot. So when we took this to CIP in the winter, we had estimated spending approximately $225,000. In the middle of that process, probably towards the end of that process, we were made aware that the costs were going to go up. We had already been through the approvals from CIP and this was a public hearing. But we didn't know where those dollars would land. So in front of you, you have a quote for $265,050. We planned for $100,000 coming from, let me make sure I want to get it right. $125,000 from a lease and $100,000 coming from the reserve fund. So CIP and Board of Finance decided to split this purchase. Instead of leasing the whole thing, we're going to pay cash for some and lease the other. And then when the new truck comes in, to trade in a current vehicle. All that is still planned to happen, except for now we need $265,050. And the prices are continuing to go up. These prices don't hold for very long. And we have to take these things through the process, the appropriate process in town, which will include Board of Finance appropriations and town meetings and public hearings for the leasing portion. My concern is that by the time we get to that, this price could go up. And we are not going to trade in the vehicle until such time as we get a new vehicle. And Troy, what's the time frame they're quoting to you on when this truck would become available?
Would be next April, and it'd be on a 2024 chassis.
April of 2023. So they could quote us what our truck is worth today as a trade-in, and that's what we would plan on. But anything could happen to that truck between now and then, and I don't know that they'd give it to us for that. And what do we do? So Donna and I had this conversation. Her recommendation was that we seek funding for the total amount. We are absolutely expecting to and plan to trade in. So there would be a maximum amount we'd be asking for from Board of Finance. And then the idea is that we would be spending less when the vehicle comes in because we would have traded in a dump truck. So with that, we would be going to Board of Finance, asking them for a couple of different options and approving some additional dollars from the, I'm looking at Donna's notes and I apologize, there's something else in here. From the reserve fund. She recommended that we ask, if we approve this total amount, that we then ask the Board of Finance for the additional dollars from the general fund, which would still need to go to town meeting for approval. We need to go to town meeting for the reserve fund dollars as well. So the initial appropriations we had been planning, we need more money. And across the board, vehicles have gone up, so it's certainly concerning to me. This is a lot more money than we had anticipated, and I know I really worry about what the value of this truck will be almost a year from now, after it's been used for the winter.
I'm sorry, remind me what the initial allocation was?
We planned for 225,000.
Okay, so it's gone up to 40K.
Correct. And Troy, did you say they would hold these dollars for 30 days from this quote?
Actually, August 7th, I believe, I just spoke with the body, for the body side, not the truck side. And he said the quote after August 7th would have to be re-quoted out again. It could go up a little bit, it could go up a little, it could not, but he can only hold that price till August 7th, which was the 30 days.
So folks, this is where we stand. I think we can only use a number we have in front of us, unless we factored in a reasonable contingency amount, which we've done on projects in the past. But it's going to require additional funds that we had not planned on.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, none of this is,
And
Is
I would,
good and-
I would recommend at least like maybe a 10% contingency or something like that.
okay. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I know some of the projects I've requested of late and some that we sent, this group sent on to ARPA even, we put up to 15,000. We were able to, I'm sorry, 15%. 15% contingency, and we've been able to come in under, but vehicles out there in the real world is a whole new ballgame. The fact that our public works vehicle that we ordered a year ago still hasn't come in. Troy and I are going to take a visit out to the dealership this week to see if we can't make some headway with that. Would cost us a lot more if we were buying it with today's dollars.
So on the flip side of this, because it takes so long to order something, used vehicles are so high for so long. So I'm not too concerned about the used dump truck going down in value. It it'll probably be close to wherever we've estimated it.
Listen, I hope so. My worst fear is that something will happen to it.
Oh.
Right? And we're gonna use it for another season.
Like an ash. tree
Yeah,
to
so
fall on
we
or
won't say,
something
we
like
won't
that.
say anything specific out loud, so as not to put it out into the universe. Troy, do you think it will hold its value? Like we expect our used cars to?
I can't say. to
Don't see any
that.
reason why it wouldn't.
It would, right, exactly. But I mean, like you said, it could have some major engine problems. It depends on what happens or with what it is. I mean, we'll still keep servicing it and we'll still keep cleaning it and doing the best we can to keep that value up. But I can't speak for the dealership to see if they would, honor the same price as they would a year from now.
Yeah.
Hopefully
And
they,
some of that is why when Donna and I were discussing how to approach this and what dollars to be asking for, we were originally going to plan dollars for the trade-in, but determined it was best for us to plan for the full dollar amount, and then we return to the town what we don't get in a trade-in, so that we're prepared, not knowing now. It's certainly very different than ordering trucks 3 years ago, for sure.
So that seems reasonable in my mind.
Yes.
And just, I still think a contingency of some, like 10% or something like that.
You want to shoot for 10%?
I'd be nervous to go higher
Do
than
you
that.
have it?
It's
So-
pretty expensive.
We need a dollar amount as we move forward.
Like another 26,000.
26,000.
265,150. That's not better.
It should be about 26,000.
No, but I added it. So we're looking at $291,050. That's this number plus that 26,000. All right, so I would, do you need to read it from Donna's motion? These are the motions for the Board of Finance. As they make appropriations and then request us to do things. So for us, we'd be choosing the vendor and then moving this discussion to Board of Finance for their next meeting, and that could be as early as this Thursday. So I would move to award the vendor and specifications for the 2024 Freightliner 114 SD single axle plow truck to Freightliner of Hartford in the amount of $291,050.
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Further discussion?
So I'm assuming because the price of used is so high that it really doesn't do us much benefit to consider looking for any kind of used chassis to work with. No,
Yeah. I think these trucks take quite a beating.
yeah,
Low miles, but high usage, right, is how we often describe them. All right, any further discussion? Ms. Fluor? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, thank you. All right, the next item is the reval process discussion. So we're due for a reval in 2023. I want to just be clear. I know there's been some discussion by residents. There was no revaluation on property in this current season. Our last reval was in 2018. So homes across the board were not reassessed in value. That will happen unless we take further action in 2023. So the state allows some towns to opt to defer the revaluation until the assessment year and go 1 year out, right? And in order to do that, we needed to get in on the legislation that was done. So you're not locked into anything, but Willington was specifically listed in, it was a substitute House Bill 5167, Special Act number 22-6, with which would allow particular municipalities, Willington listed specifically, were required to implement a reval, but we could defer that for 1 year to commence October 1, 2024. In order to do that, this would have to go to our legislative body would be who decides that. So that is not us. It would start with us and then we would send this to town meeting. I thought it was important that we have this discussion for a couple of reasons. We do have our listing out for an assessor. So we do not have movement on an assessor now. This is a shortage area across the board for sure, but we are moving forward with that. On top of that, I thought it was prudent in the financial times we were in to have a discussion on what a reval in this next year would mean for residents and the town, right? So there are certainly benefits to both, and there are drawbacks to both the resident and the town, especially with the market the way that it is. And so we do not have to decide, and I don't know that I encourage us to decide this in one meeting. I think we have this discussion, we can hear what folks say and comment on it and take their comments into consideration. But that we consider whether or not we want to defer for 1 year, and it can only be for 1 year. It does not change the 5-year cycle. So it just means you have 1 year less over your next 5-year cycle.
so it means that we would be
It would be
doing
a
it again
4
in
year.
4 years.
Correct.
Do it again for.
That is correct.
Okay.
So
I think it's a good idea to at least have a professional assessor compile that revaluation.
yes,
First of all, I don't think revaluation is supposed to be revenue neutral. Right? It just says, what are things valued now? And then the mill rate is adjusted to meet your budget based on the valuation. It all kind of flows together. So there's not really a bad thing that happens. It's like if it goes up, if your valuations are going up, let's just say, then your mill rate would go down.
In practice, that's not how it works though. In practice, the value goes up and the mill rate stays the same or goes up.
It goes up because your spending is going up.
Right, so
But if you don't, leaving things the same, assuming spending doesn't move, right? Then if your valuation goes up, your mill rate will go down. It's supposed to be revenue neutral.
right. So there have been, and we have a list, I can share with you the list from the last probably 12 plus years of, no, it goes farther back than that, multiple revals, and you can see where our mill rate has been on the years we do a reval, and most oftentimes our mill rate has gone, our mill rate has gone down in reval years. Now, we're still dealing with crumbling foundations, so that seriously impacts this. But my guess is, unless something changed, we're gonna see a significant increase in the value of people's homes. While that is a fantastic thing for the homeowner and the home buyer, if our mill rate does not change, and we are still in this inflation period we're in, we may not be able to function our basic fiduciary responsibilities of the town by lowering our spending, which has been we've seen has been very difficult. Look at just the one item we ordered before. So while what you're saying, I think should be the way it is, I just think this is the time to have a solid discussion because we have the opportunity to put it off. I wish we had an assessor at this point to come in. I certainly can reach out to a couple of assessors, one of whom worked for us previously, just to maybe come in and share some thoughts on the process, maybe in general, certainly not encouraging us one way or the other. But it would have to go to town meeting, even to do this, what we're talking about would have to go to town meeting.
And I believe some of those assessors were looking at things like UConn students and vehicles.
Yes.
There was something there
Yes.
we were trying to capture accurately.
So in a typical year, we'd be working on the RFP for the process and beginning that now. Some of the work is done ahead of time in the year ahead. This is not a physical year, so the cost is a little bit less than what we had done the last time. So there needs to be a broader conversation. I definitely would like some input from our residents. Are you with us?
I am.
On our residents on this matter, and which is why I don't suggest we make any decisions now, but start to take a look at that. If you would like, someone to come out and speak to us, I would love to say by the next time we meet, we would have a quality assessor, but you will both know that because you'll be part of that process.
I think at the beginning, Mr.
Yeah.
Pella was talking about some statutes that we could look at.
Mhm.
And take advantage of. So I'd like to have some time to look at that as well.
Okay, so let's keep this on our agenda to discuss, and again, discuss putting this off one more year. And then possibly having a 4-year cycle. The next, again, I want to make sure we weigh all the pros and cons of this and that we have good hearty discussion. So that if we ask for a deferral, we take this to the town meeting, we are confident in our suggestion to residents. Okay, excellent, thank you. All right, the last item of new business is cannabis retail establishment discussion. So there was discussion at the last planning and zoning meeting to get some input from this board on their proposed regulations. My comments to them were, we have not taken this matter up. So I certainly couldn't speak for the board, but that we would comment. They wanted to know what our thoughts were as they weighed their discussion. So I did share with you, sorry, I have lots of revaluation items here. I did share with you some of the information on the Cannabis Act, some of the options that are before both, on the municipal side, and many of them fall to planning and zoning. I will tell you that there is potential tax implication if cannabis retail is established in Wellington. I am simply sharing information. I am not giving you my opinion on whether or not that should happen at this point. The law provides that 3% of those revenues would be provided to the town. It requires that the tax money received shall be used for, and I'll give you some of the examples, streetscape improvements and other neighborhood developments in and within the community, fund education programs or youth employment and training programs in the municipality, fund services for individuals released from the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections, probation, and parole residing in the community, fund mental health or addiction services. They could fund youth service bureaus, and municipal juvenile review boards, and to fund efforts to promote civic engagement in and within the community. We did hear some residents, both on, at least one on this meeting and at the, I don't know if either of you were at the public hearing. I think Jimmy were at the public hearing,
I was,
with some concerns about potential crime. From our side, we could put in some language that could disallow cannabis use in town-owned properties and town-owned buildings. But what PZC asked us, and I won't put him on the spot, but there's a planning and zoning member here, so if I'm prefacing this wrong, please correct me. They wanted our input on if they approved regulations to allow these establishments. And I don't know if either of you have looked at their proposed regulations. So I will open this topic to discussion. Liza?
So this used to be the field that I worked in, right? So I'm very well versed on what legalization of marijuana will mean for the state and for towns, as well as what the negative impacts could be, social impacts, community crime, and all of that. Thankfully, we are not amongst the first states that has legalized recreational marijuana. For those states that came before, we've learned a lot of lessons about how to do it well and how not to do it well. There are a couple of examples of states that have done it very poorly and have suffered some very negative consequences. Models such as Massachusetts and Vermont, which I think the Massachusetts model is the one that Connecticut's is most closely mimicking, have had the least negative impact in terms of community impact, crime, and there's been able to be, especially in the communities and the direct areas where marijuana has been sold, the crime rates have not been increased and they've not been dramatically changed. There have been increases in hospitalizations, especially when it comes to young people getting access to marijuana, and that's one of the biggest concerns. But in terms of like street crime or things of that sort, which I think sometimes we associate with a loud, rowdy bar, those things are not necessarily existent around retail establishments of marijuana. So, do I have an opinion one way or the other? I mean, I think there's a way that it can be done well and a way that it is not done well. And it would really, if Wellington chose to adopt a policy that allowed the sale of recreational marijuana, we would again need to re-engage in the conversation about security and police force. I think that would be my biggest issue, not necessarily because of affiliated crimes in the retail establishment, but enforcement of general issues around the retail establishment and within the community. So I do think one goes hand in hand with the other, having both conversations of if we have a medical or if we have a recreational marijuana establishment, we've got to think about public safety again, or continue to think about public safety.
I do agree that you need to have a public safety component in this. I've been educating myself on this matter in the last few months. It's been, you can see it coming in the news and all that. And I can find just as many studies that says crime increases. The University of Colorado in Boulder.
Colorado is for example.
For example.
They were
Well,
the
I
first.
can find that one, that's one, but there's others. There's a recent article in the Wall Street Journal that talks about cannabis and the violent crime surge, and that was just done in June of this year. There's numerous, so I can find some that are for it, I can find some that are against it. It's, people have come to me and said, what can I do? I don't want this here and all that. And I always say, get involved and please speak up at your planning and zoning hearings. But me personally, I have to say I'm against it. And I'm against it because not all business is good for Wellington. You look at stuff, you say, yes, can we use the revenue? Boy, we could use the revenue. But a nuclear power plant in Wellington would be a bad thing. You know, putting windmills probably on all the hillsides, probably a bad thing, all right? I'm just giving those as examples, and I'm thinking having cannabis in our town, any revenue you might realize from that will probably go to dumping into a police force or law enforcement. So I don't think it's the panacea we make it out to be. So I'm totally against it.
I think nationally, what we do find is that it is it's a net neutral in terms of income. Because you're right, you need to
You're gonna put it
increase
somewhere else.
support services, like the money doesn't get to be profit.
And there's other medical side effects too. I mean, you know, smoking is still bad. Right? I don't care what you're smoking, it's bad. Ask any fire
I think,
department. You know.
Unfortunately, this is
We
a
cannot-
discussion of the
I
board.
was just gonna
This
say-
is a discussion of the board, so I'd ask that you hold your comments to present to speak. I think there's different avenues, right? So it's not always smoking. I agree with you, smoking is bad. I had very different opinions about this until I attended a workshop through CCM with folks from Colorado.
Mhm.
And boy, was that eye-opening. Again,
Yeah.
talk about a bad model.
Yeah.
And they had
Colorado.
lots of lessons. And I was in a room with all of my counterparts from across the state. And many of us were shocked by the discussion. This is certainly modeled very different, but I can't help but have heard the concerns from some of our residents in Willington. I see some where there could be some impact. But again, is it going to be revenue neutral? Is there the same question will come up again? How much do we rely on Troop C and not directly to Willington, right? So we don't have our own resident trooper, and a residency trooper, we all know, is not the answer to our every issue. That would be one person who would not be working 24 hours a day. So it's not gonna be our answer to speeding, to crime, to even this, but it's a start. And it at least gives us a voice in that arena. So would we be saying we're in favor of this, but then we're having another discussion? And of the things we could use that 3% from, I'm not sure that paying for police services would fall into the uses.
I didn't hear public
that.
safety on that
Sure
list.
didn't.
No.
So unless something changes with that, this would cost us more because we'd be putting money into other areas and be able to invest in some other areas. But then if the call is that we need more enforcement on that side, we're looking at greater impact. There could be a whole other conversation about a state trooper and what it would bring. And that might be a beneficial conversation for us to bring forth to taxpayers. Again, we have many who lived in town when this came up before. And we have many new residents in town, so it might be worth having a further discussion and new information brought forward. But, does this board feel that we want to weigh in on this to planning and zoning? And maybe a nod from the planning and zoning member, the public hearing is still open.
I believe it is.
It is. And. Okay.
Can't remember the public hearing closed.
I couldn't remember if you discussed later, so I'm not 100% sure if the public hearing was closed, but they asked for our
We
input.
voted to close the public hearing.
Okay, but then in your discussions,
Haven't made the discussion yet.
right, in their further discussions as they move to potential action, they asked, what are the leaders of their community? How did we weigh in? And while I know this has been going on and being discussed at planning and zoning for some time, I think another item in their agenda brought a lot more people to the table, which made a lot more folks aware of this item and allowed them to speak to it. And if you were on those meetings or heard it, there was a considerable area of concern in here. So
I didn't hear anybody in favor of it.
I don't know that I heard it, but I know they have gotten
sure there
communications
is.
from folks because I think this is one of those areas where people aren't as comfortable speaking out in favor in the public setting. Just like we see in multiple arenas, people are more comfortable speaking one way or the other, and they're not required to share their opinion on it, but the decisions are being made at planning and zoning. And unfortunately, the only thing they had to weigh in, besides their individual votes, in the public process is what they hear from us. So they have gotten some communications in, I believe, email format in favor of this. So I think there probably is in our community. I think we just heard the concern in the other direction, a little bit more vocal.
One, and the other thing to consider is we're not talking, like Willington doesn't have the power to legalize or make illegal recreational marijuana. That ship is sailed and the state of Connecticut has legalized recreational marijuana. It will be taking effect. The impact to Willington, if there's an impact, it's going to come regardless because there will be members of the community who now have far easier access to recreational marijuana than previously. There will be an increase in marijuana use within the community. That is going to happen regardless. So if we're looking to avoid all of the negative consequences associated with recreational marijuana, we have to get rid of that pipe dream right now.
Yes.
Because it is here. So the question is, how do we respond in terms of the business side of it? And, I'll restate my opinion that if we do go forward with allowing recreational marijuana, then it needs to be hand in hand with conversations, but also moving forward with increased public safety. And that's both emergency services and medical services and police services. Like both of those things need to be addressed.
Because the reality is if somebody isn't allowed to establish their business here, they could right on the edge of town in Willington.
We
right?
are right next to
So,
stores,
we
Connecticut,
are
where
next to
there's the
stores.
University of Connecticut.
Whether it be any
It
of our
will be
neighboring,
there.
right,
Very
any of our neighboring towns, so our residents will have easy access to it. It's where's the weighing of the need for some of those increased services, Liza has said, with if we're going to be a benefit of some of the negative impacts, we'll have none of this additional tax revenue, and I'm talking about what will come from the state, to put towards some of these social services or, corrections services that could benefit our community. And so this is where I really struggle with saying, yes, I'm in favor of it, or no, that I'm not, because we're going to be impacted.
And just to Google around dispensaries and things like that, there's piles of them. They're all over the place.
They
I
sure
mean,
are.
particularly over the border. I think that it's saturated. I mean, so one or two may come into Willington. I mean, you're not gonna get that big of foot traffic like you think, and I don't think you're gonna get that kind of revenue like you think.
I don't know that I think we're gonna get a lot, but I know if the regulations ban it outright, there is no revenue to the town. So we could still have some of the impact, but none of the additional revenues. And so, it's a lot to talk about it. And what they were discussing at PZC was, aside from their regulations, potentially saying, no, we're not going to allow this altogether. They'd already put a moratorium on it, and that has passed, which has moved them to this point in time.
Just like
So,
there's some dry towns, right?
correct. So.
Right.
There are.
No, I know they exist, but like,
But are they?
are they drinking in those towns? Quite certainly those.
They just
people
don't
do.
sell it.
Right,
They
yeah.
just don't sell it there. So the, question before is do we want to make a formal recommendation from this board? Or let our open conversation stand as our voice? And respond back to them that, we're a little bit neutral, if you weigh in our responses here, but that if they move forward with regulations, that we would need to move forward with a further discussion on public safety and EMS.
And the other thing also, when we were having this conversation several years ago about adult retail establishments, we were not at that time allowed to say, no, we would not allow any adult retail establishments. However, what we could do is create policies that specified where those establishments could be. And I think a similar thing could happen here about the where we would allow, like, obviously not within a certain distance of schools or playgrounds or, any place, and churches, like those are very common policies that other communities have put in place. So, we have a very limited retail center. So there aren't a gazillion opportunities for businesses to come in. Present discussions on other topics aside, we're not talking about a very buzzing downtown where there are gazillions of different storefronts where this is a possibility.
And this is specifically about retail establishments, not growing establishments. So make sure we know folks we're talking about very different, because the cultivators licenses are very few and much more regulated within the state. So we're currently talking about a retail sales establishment. So I can kind of summarize our discussion and send that along to planning and zoning, unless someone would like to propose actual action.
I don't think there's any
Okay.
action. We
Nope. All right.
They wanted to know what we thought.
So again,
I
to
think
the
that's
planning
pretty
and
clear.
zoning members who may be on and in the room, we hope our discussion was helpful for you. Okay, and I look forward to hearing that further discussion. So I thank you. Okay.
Can anyone in the audience speak?
Not just,
Not
yeah.
just-
I did have a request to add an item to the agenda. I just want you to know that we did not, because it was filling a seat that we could not currently move forward with. So seeing no new business, I will move to present to speak. So this is an opportunity, once again, for residents to speak to us. And this time I'm going to start on the computer, and then I'll come back to the room. So start with the first one on the computer, and then I'll come back to you. So Mr. Tanaka, I ask you to identify yourself for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Pete Tanaka, 125 Mason Road. I'd like to speak on the retail cannabis. I think that what I've heard from people who have done a lot of traveling to states where recreational marijuana is legal is that the number one complaint is not the retail establishment, but the overwhelming smell of marijuana that's being burnt around them, and et cetera, that becomes an annoyance. I think that would have to be regulated. I would also like to say that from a health standpoint, which was mentioned, when I was working at the hospital, it was the unregulated illegal marijuana and marijuana synthetics that I saw some horrific after effects of, and that's what brought me around to believing legal marijuana may be a better answer, and that we should probably learn the lessons of the 18th Amendment. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tulis.
Can you hear me okay?
Sure can. I hope you can hear us.
I can. Actually,
Okay.
tonight it was much better for some reason.
We're trying.
I used my stage voice.
The microphone
Is
is
that what it
real
was?
close.
Okay. I actually have a few topics I can touch on, but I'm going to go with the hot topic of the night, which seems to be cannabis. And a little brief history real quick. Back in September 21st, PZC established a moratorium on cannabis so that they could study the issue and formulate some regulations. That moratorium expired March 21st of this year. They had done nothing. And it was, I reminded them of that fact. So rather than extend the moratorium, they decided that they would ponder the issue and try to establish some sensible regulations, which they've done, but have gotten nowhere with that. Now, a couple of things that were not spelled out to planning and zoning, and that everyone at this meeting should be aware of. There's two sections of the statutes, 21A-422F as in Frank, which allows the municipality either by zoning or by ordinance to prohibit the establishment of a cannabis establishment. That is one. Secondly, the planning and zoning can go a variety of different routes. They can not allow cannabis establishments at all. They could do selective. They could allow micro growers and not retail, or not allow anything. But more importantly, in section 21A-422G, the electors of the town of Willington can make this decision by petition. Not less than 10% of the electors of any municipality lodged with the town clerk at least 60 days before the date of any regular election. The selectmen of the municipality shall warn the electors of such municipality that at such regular election, a vote shall be taken to determine whether or not the recreational sale of marijuana shall be permitted in such municipality. So in other words, no matter what planning and zoning does, the residents can decide, the electors can decide what we're going to do. Now, they give some examples of multiple questions that should be asked in that referendum. So, and it's all done by license type. So this is something that the members of this community could decide to do. My position, personally, I'm neutral. I'd like to see what Mansfield's going to do because of the college campus. They still, as far as I know, have a moratorium in place. If they were to legalize retail sales, Vernon is gung-ho retail sales. What's that going to leave us? What is our 3% of Willington sales? Probably minuscule. Now, if Mansfield does not allow that, well, we're going to get a lot of traffic from Yukon perhaps, or maybe Wyndham will, or maybe Ashford or Chaplin. I don't know, but a lot of things to ponder. And I'm going to stay neutral at this point. I just wanted to offer these little tidbits of information. If anyone wants copies of those sections of the statutes, I'd be happy to share them. And real quick on Reval, a year delay just delays the inevitable. So I don't know whether or not it's a good idea to delay that. Let's just get it done. And then we'll have 5 years till the next time we have to worry about it. That's all I got to say for now.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to go in the room, ma'am.
Okay, President here, 5 Common Road. I just wanted to say a few things about the cannabis. I thought that one of the most important points that was made in the June meeting was the traffic. And if you even heard anything about what happened in Northampton last year, it was horrendous. It was a horrendous traffic jam at the Northampton exit. There were cars piling all the way back on the highway. So I don't think that we should take this decision so lightly, because the revenue is going to be so meaningless. I mean, it's not even a third of the truck that you want. And so is that worth all this horrible hassle? Not to mention the recent articles that have appeared in the New York Times about the effects on adolescents with marijuana. So I also want to say that I thought what PCC was doing was creating regulations for the creation of the establishments. And I thought from the last conversation that it was going to be at least 1,500 yards parameter. And as I forgot the gentleman's name was the contact. I think it is D'Amato.
Mike D'Amato.
Yeah, he made a circle, and really there would be one establishment at most in the Phelps Way area, unless there was a PCC hearing to change zoning. And that is worrisome, I think, to a lot of the people in the town. But I do worry about the consequences in our town. We are, as you said, already so close to 2 universities, because I wouldn't discount East Con and Manchester Community College. So I don't think that we should rush to not regulate, because I think this is an important issue. And I think that it could affect the small town character of our town.
Thank you. Mr. Tella, I'll come back to you. Mr. Tella?
Nicholas Tella, 49 Myrtle, just wrote down thoughts and comments here. I understand the boards have their own rules and such they govern by. I'm unsure if the state dictates that the school board committee must have all school employees or if that's driven by the town. If it is a Wellington School Board Committee rule, then hopefully you guys can maybe give a recommendation to open up maybe a number of seats to the town people, just so there's proper representation also coming from the people, taxpayer, and not just the workers there. Safety concern to have, so at the end of Myrtle Road, if you take a left onto Wellington Hill, you're kind of blindsided by stone wall there and a little bit of a hill. I don't know if there's consideration maybe putting a mirror up on South Wellington Hill, so those coming out of Myrtle can at least view those coming from the left side. Just want to make a point that the state has marijuana legal, but the federal government has a Schedule I drug with high potential for abuse, and that's according to the DEA. Maybe we should be giving a little bit of consideration to what the federal government's saying too. I know we pick and choose when we're going to listen to them, but personally don't care if people want to smoke weed in their home. It's none of my business. Just don't want to see the selling of it in our town due to crime. Not budgeting for the tanks. I don't know if I heard 18,000 or 1,800. It sounded like 18,000, which would make sense. That's pretty concerning that the town didn't have that on their radar. I heard on the library committee the other day that they're not even paying attention to the HVAC system, and now they have repairs that just popped up. It's a concern going into potentially building basically a new building for the school. I'm worried we will be basically building a new school and won't maintain it properly. Here's some evidence already popping up around here. Here we are just spending like we can, just raising the spending money and just raising the mill rate like it's no big deal. Love the idea of looking at used vehicles. I think we should actually give a little bit more consideration to that in the meantime. Maybe we shouldn't be building new schools and buying brand new vehicles if we can't afford it with some dark clouds on the horizon economically. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go into the room.
Alicia Corsini, 732 River Road. I want to thank you for thinking about not doing the reevaluate right now. With the COVID and the interest in everything that is going through the roof. Oil's going through the roof. To heat the house is going to be horrendous this year. To put it off for a year, I think it's going to be a big help to a lot of the elderly people even. Our population here in town is mostly elderly. When I graduated from 8th grade in 78, there was, there was a lot more kids than there is now. I mean, there was almost 100 kids in my 8th grade class. There's what, 300 kids in all K through 8 now? Or 40. That's a big deal. We're spending a lot of money looking at a new school when he was right. We don't maintain what we have. Nothing's maintained properly. I get that it's the money end of it, but it's gotta be put in the budget. You gotta try to forward think. Really have to.
Thank you. Are you good? Okay. Excuse me. Thank you. Mr. Marshall. I'm just going left to right.
No, hi,
May not
everybody.
match your boxes.
James Marshall, 46 Fisher Hill Road. I just wanted to speak briefly at the end of this regarding the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting tomorrow night. I did just get word. So tomorrow night's meeting is a hybrid meeting. It's both in person at Hall School and remote being the Zoom link. I did just receive word from Mr. D'Amato, our zoning agent, that the setup tomorrow night is not going to be able to accommodate members of the public sharing any visual information or talking to any visual information during the meeting live. It will be able to be viewed by the public or people attending remotely. Apparently, there is no ability to share screens set up in the room. It's disappointing knowing that people, do have a lot to say. And as I'm an architect, I like visual stuff. I speak through pictures. So, it's disappointing that in this day and age, we can't set up a projector and a screen and have the ability to share, have the ability to have somebody share screen so that people in attendance can see what's being shared and so that people at home can also see the presentation or any material. We can submit documentation ahead to the zoning agent, but, that's not as effective and quite frankly, not as beneficial to those attending the meeting either live or remote. To have an understanding of some of the material being presented or hoping to be presented. So I'd ask, I know we have members of the zoning, the Planning and Zoning Commission in attendance here. And I'd request that this board, while there is opportunity to do so, since there is still 24 hours, to perhaps consider looking at opportunities to correct the situation and allow people to have the most voice that they possibly can tomorrow night. So thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Miller? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll come back to you next.
Sorry about that. I'm not used to doing these Zooms. I just have a couple of comments. I'm pretty
Right, if you'd like
neutral
to-
about marijuana.
Sorry, can I ask you to identify yourself for the record, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. 55 Mahaliac Road, Melissa
name?
Miller. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to share a couple of concerns. I know that crime studies go back and forth about, the impact of marijuana, but as stated, that it is still against federal law, and we should take in that consideration, especially when we're thinking about how close it can be to places like schools, churches, and things like that. Even, with regular class drugs, it's still within 1,500 feet of a school if you have possession. So I really think that we should really take our kids into consideration. I don't have any children in this town, but I do have a granddaughter, and these proposals are going through the states one after another, and I do see the potential revenue. But also a lot of other towns are planning on doing this. I don't know how many people smoke recreational marijuana. It's none of my business. But, I think we really should make sure that we take our kids into consideration when it comes to that, because the impacts of marijuana, especially on young people, we don't really know the major side effects, the long-term side effects. And there's been a lot of recent studies on, especially with young people smoking marijuana, with psychosis and, just kind of in the state of the world, and a lot of young people having a lot of serious issues with violence. I see it every day. I work in the system, so I just wanted to voice my opinion on that. In addition, I know there wasn't a lot of talk about the recent truck stop that's being built, Loves. I noticed that they put a stop sign in for the local traffic, which I understand, because I understand that there's a hill there. But there has been a lot of stuff going on. There's been tractor trailers coming up and down a quiet private road that's a town road. They don't know where they're going. Somebody basically mowed over my neighbor's mailbox and a tree. The state police were out, from people just not knowing what to do. I understand that they want people to realize that Loves is coming soon, but there is absolutely no place for them to turn around. And, I just want to make sure that the impact to the people in this area that have to deal with the traffic 24/7 are going to actually have their voices still heard, even though that this truck stop is in. There's still a lot of people that live on this side of Willington that are being impacted by the trucks. And this is one of the things that's going to get discussed tomorrow night with truck traffic and all that. And I'm not going to get into what tomorrow night's meeting is, but we should really start thinking about the impact of this many trucks, and then possibly a lot more trucks running on our small roads. It is a nuisance, and I get it, and I live by the highway, and I don't have an issue. What I have an issue with is people turning around in my driveway 24/7, and my property that's going to possibly get damaged because people don't read that one small sign that says no services. And I think the town should start considering, especially if we're going to have a lot more truck traffic, to maybe figure out what we need to do to work with the state, whatever the regulations may be, to start limiting the amount of truck use, tractor trailers, especially on our small local roads, 320, 44, 74. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go in the room, sir.
I want to address two issues
Identify yourself for the record again, please.
in 2 minutes. One is.
Identify yourself for the record.
Oh, David Granick, 22 Willington Hill Road, also known as 320, the roller coaster. In reference to the town truck and how you're saying it's going up, I've been spending all summer with a friend of mine who wants to buy a new tractor trailer. I called all over the country and the truck he wants is not available because all the factories are then shut down because of the virus. Now they're opening up. He had to put a $2,500 deposit on the truck to hold it for him. So that might be something you might want to look at. The other issue I'd have is about the loves, and it's not the truck drivers, it's Showcase Cinemas, or Showcase, whatever they call themselves, at the old Red and Arts Building. I was up there the other day, and it was raining, 3 trailer trucks. People inside that building were telling them to go up Mahayak Road and go down the dirt road. I kind of blew it. I mean, being an ex-truck driver, but I'm still a truck driver, I know what roads can be driven on. As of 320, I've driven across 320 with fire trucks and with 18-wheelers with no issues. So the problem is the people that are driving their cars are gonna learn to pay attention.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Mr. Christensen.
Arthur Christensen, 14 Birch Meadow Lane. I just want to make a quick comment on the cannabis issue. I mean, personally, I am against the distribution in the town, but I just want to ask anybody who might be on the fence of the issue or doing their homework on the issue and researching these studies. I would just urge everybody to look past headlines in the articles that you find and click into the actual studies. They're not that difficult to read, and sometimes they paint a different picture. My quick example is I found a study that said crime went down 50% in a town that had a marijuana dispensary, but the only 2 crimes they studied when I went into the actual study were illegal marijuana distribution and illegal marijuana possession. So that was a fairly obvious conclusion that really solved nothing. So headlines can be very deceiving, and I urge anybody who's doing their homework to actually go in and read the studies as they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
As an instructor of research methods at the college level, I thank you for that message, Arthur.
Everyone's favorite thing to hear is I read the headline and here's the story.
Yes.
Mister, I'm gonna go one more online and then we'll finish up here in the room. Mr. Tulis? I'll give you a quick leeway with your.
All right, very quick. One point that I forgot to mention earlier, because of planning and zoning's inaction on any kind of regulations for cannabis, right now, if an application were to come in for a retail establishment selling cannabis, we have no choice but to accept that application and treat it no differently than we would treat a package store. And that's just the way it is, because we don't have any regulations in place that influence where these operations can be. So hopefully that won't be the case, but once the licenses start getting issued by the state of Connecticut, someone could land one in Wellington right now, and there's not a thing we could do about it other than follow regulations for a package store, a comparable retail establishment. So it's something that planning and zoning needs to keep in mind and get off their butts and get some regulations in place if we're going to allow it or not allow it. Thank you.
Sir. And one last comment here in the room.
Rosalina Chichia, for Common Road. I just want to say 2 things. One, I agree with Mr. Tullis that the regulations are necessary and are important and they should pass them. That's different from whether you would like to make this a no zone. I think that's those are 2 different issues. I also think that the best solution, or the only solution I could see to the love problem, is to create a circle there, because we don't want people going either way. And I know that you previously told my husband that we cannot place signs prohibiting trucks over 300 tons to go over a certain road, but I have seen those signs in the town of Pomfret in 2 or 3 places. So I don't understand why town of Pomfret can place those signs and town of Wellington cannot.
Thank you. I see a hand up, or did I just see you move? No, okay. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. All right, thank you all for your comments. I want to assure you that we hear them all, even when we don't respond. So I will move forward to good and welfare. I'll give you the June Troop C report. There were 333 calls for service, included 14 accidents, 17 criminal investigations, 1 burglary, 2 larcenies, 211 non-reportable matters, and 12 arrests. 75 total traffic stops, included 3 on-site DUIs, 3 arrests, 3 misdemeanor summons, 30 infractions, 14 written warnings, and 27 verbal warnings. A reminder that mobile food share, which is open to all and not just within the Willington community, but any resident in the state, will be here at the town office building this Wednesday from 11 to 11:30, and that is every other week. If you can, I ask that you still continue to support our small businesses and restaurants. Still waiting eagerly for the new restaurant at the old River and Rail location to open. The summer concert series began last week. I apologize, as I had a family emergency. I was unable to attend, but I hear Bruce John gave quite an event. It did conflict with another event that folks were in town, but I encourage you to head down to River Road Athletic Complex between 6:30 and 8:30 every Wednesday for some wonderful live music, and thank all those who sponsored our concerts and our rec department, specifically our director, Alan Humphreys, for his hard work on that. Summer camp that was 100% funded by ARPA dollars began last week, and what a wonderful week it was. I had a chance to visit, and I can say without a doubt that the 50 campers and our multiple camp staff were having a great time. I look forward to being able to go back and visiting with them again. So I want to thank the ARPA Commission for their funds to allow 50 campers each week for the next 6 weeks, or now the next 5 weeks. And I will end with asking you all to keep former Selectman James McCoo, who's also our neighbor here at the town office building, in your thoughts and prayers. He has been hospitalized with very serious health issues. So we keep him in our prayers and that of his family as well. With that and no other business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second. Seconded by Jim. This is a non-debatable matter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 8:07 p.m. I thank you all for your attendance and your voices.